Welcome to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, a weekly news podcast covering all the top positive and uplifting news stories. Are you tired of the same old news? Are you sick of the seemingly endless political spin and negativity? We cover stories that will inspire, uplift, and remind you of the good in the world. Tune into the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast to get all the great and positive news stories of today.
Thank you for tuning in to the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Emily Ferrier, here to bring you some uplifting news stories in these trying times. For our first story, the scent of a romantic partner can improve sleep, suggests a new psychology research from the University of British Columbia. Researchers found that the study participants who were exposed to their partner scent overnight experienced better sleep quality, even though their partner was not physically present. Our findings provide new evidence that merely sleeping with a partner scent improves sleep efficiency. Our participants had, on average, sleep efficiency improvement of more than 2%, says Marlise Hoffer, the study's lead author and a graduate student at the UBC's Department of Psychology. We saw an effect similar in size to what has been reported from taking oral melatonin supplements, often used as a sleep aid. For this study, researchers analyzed sleep data from 155 participants who were given two identical-looking t-shirts to use as pillowcases. One had been previously worn by their romantic partner, and the other had been worn by a stranger who was clean, or was just clean, To capture body odor on t-shirts, the participants' partners were given a clean t-shirt to wear for 24 hours, and were asked to refrain from using deodorant and scented body products, smoking, exercising, and eating certain foods that could affect body odor. The t-shirts were then frozen to preserve their scents. Each participant was then given two shirts to place over their pillows, without being told which one was which. They spent 2 consecutive nights sleeping with each t-shirt. Each morning, they completed a survey about how well rested they felt. Their sleep quality was also objectively measured, using an actigraphy sleep watch that monitored their movements throughout the night. At the end of the study, participants guessed if the shirts they'd been sleeping with had been worn by their partner. Participants reported feeling more well-rested on the nights when they believed they were sleeping with their partner's scent. Moreover, regardless of their beliefs about scent exposure, data from the sleep watchers indicated that objective sleep was improved when participants were actually exposed to their partner's scent. One of the most surprising findings is how a romantic partner scent can improve sleep quality even outside of our conscious awareness, said Francis Chan, the study's author and associate professor at the UBC Department of Psychology. The sleep watch data showed that participants experienced less tossing and turning when exposed to their partner's scent, even if they weren't aware of whose scent they were smelling. The researchers said that the physical presence of a long-term partner is associated with positive health outcomes, such as a sense of safety, calm, and relaxation, which, in turn, leads to better sleep. By signaling recent physical proximity, the mere scent of a partner may have similar benefits. Hoffer says the research could pave way for future work of examining the efficiency of simple and effective methods in improving sleep, such as bringing a partner's shirt the next time you leave to travel alone. The researchers are currently recruiting participants for a pilot study to investigate whether the scent of parents can improve their infants' sleep quality. These results have been accepted for publication in Psychological Science. So I wanted to look into this a little bit further, and here's a list of benefits that you can get from sleeping with a partner. Experience better sleep quality. We all strive for good sleep quality, but we don't always get it. But sleeping beside someone in a solid relationship you're in a solid relationship with is a good path for a quality sleep. Women in stable relationships fall asleep faster and had less sleep disturbances than a single woman or whose relationship status changed during the experiment. You fall asleep faster. 10 to 20 minutes is the normal amount of time it takes you to fall asleep. If it takes you longer than 30 minutes, your sleep efficiency is considerably dropped. However, the average it takes to someone to fall asleep is actually 7 minutes. It's pretty common when you're by yourself to get caught up in your own head. Your brain becomes more active if you're alone. However, if you're sleeping next to someone, they give you feelings of security so you can relax and drift off. 3, it gives you more restorative sleep. If you are with a partner, you will sleep much better as oxytocin is released to make people feel sleepy. Oxytocin, serotonin, norepinephrine, vasopressin, and prolaxin all improve your sleep and immune system. It lowers your blood pressure because of hugs and cuddling. Oh, that's so sweet. It will give you lower blood pressure due to the feeling of safety and security. It reduces anxiety. Again, probably very similar to the earlier. Touch is a powerful force. Participants experiencing anxiety, when your hand is held, your stress level decreases. However, when your hand is held by a partner, it also significantly decreases beyond that. Makes us happier. You're more likely to feel happy when you're physically close to someone. Touching someone releases dopamine and serotonin, which can boost your mood and curb depression. Slows down aging. Quality time together, cuddling, hugging, etc. Makes you feel a lot younger. It improves relationships. Couples spooning, laying back to back, or facing one another. Proximity in bed in any way showed that their relationship was interlinked with that skin-to-skin contact. Helps you build attachment. And it reduces inflammation as well. Inflammation can be reduced by sharing a duvet with a loved one. Interesting. So that's a very lovely thought that you can actually reduce all of these health risks, including physical and mental health, by just sleeping beside your partner. So give them a cuddle, next time you're with them. That's a really lovely thought. When we come back, we're going to head to Brazil.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. When we left off, we were talking about how sleeping beside your partner can improve your mental and physical health. And now, a slew of Brazilian cities are passing laws that offer tax deductions or exemptions for citizens who want to pitch it to restore the health and beauty of their communities, whether by increasing tourism, restoring historic city centers, or by boosting beautification by planting trees and maintaining their lawns. There are several ways that residents of Goiânia, Belo Horizonte, Rio do Sul, or Sorocaba can reduce their Brazilian property tax by anywhere between 30 and 100%. Shopkeepers can receive a 2-year exemption from the IPTU if they help to restore the original Art Deco style of the city's historic center, remaking their facades and storefronts to conform to the original 1950s Parisian-inspired character. For anyone that's traveled to South or Central America, the sight of a stray dog is nothing unusual. In the city of Quinta-do-Sul, the rescue program for abandoned dogs is a measure to encourage citizens to adopt stray dogs in exchange for a tax break. Dog lovers can get 50% off their tax bill for dogs, 40% for medium-sized dogs, and 30% for miniatures. Known for its jabuticaba trees, Sebra is offering anyone looking to save money on their IPTU a 5% deduction for every tree they plant in their front or back gardens. In the city of Belo Horizonte and Minas Gerais, a homeowner can get an IPTU exemption if they maintain a wild garden on their property. Described in the laws as a private ecological reserve, this specifies in the legislation, reads that the reserve of anyone seeking an exemption must contain primitive or semi-primitive natural conditions that aid the preservation of the biological cycle of species as of fauna or flora native to Brazil. As a way to ease the burden for those that have served, they are now offering exemptions for World War II vets. The city of Acros is following a suit for citizens with debilitating or chronic diseases like certain cancers, Alzheimer's, and MS. Acros has issued 20 tax exemptions since 2017 for people with cataloged chronic disease. With a score from the World Bank of 1.68 out of 7, the burden of government regulation, with 1 being the most burdensome, any break from the taxman will be a welcome relief to the citizens of Brazil. So, with more trees, with primitive resources, and happy dogs, Art Deco restaurants, the visitors of South America will be just as happy. In more news that's dog-related, at this hotel in Mississippi, you can get a lot more than food delivered with your room service. As a means of helping shelter dogs find their forever homes, the Home 2 Suites has been hosting adoptable dogs in their hotel so they can encourage their long-term guests to foster a dog during their stay. Can you imagine being able to go for a stay in a hotel and getting to hang out with a dog during it? You know, like you could, it's like renting if an Airbnb came with a dog, I would jump at the chance to stay there. Personally, I don't know if you guys would, but I think that's a huge selling point. To have a little puppy there to hang out with me. Sounds like a dream. Not only does their Fostering Hope program help shelter dogs, the dogs, which are kept in a kennel in the hotel lobby from a nearby humane society in southern Mississippi in Gulfport. So not only does it help the shelter dogs get adopted, it also frees up space at the kennels at the Humane Society itself. Since the dogs are kept in the hotel lobby, all guests have to do is ask the concierge for a dog to be brought up to their room during their stay. Bianca Janique, the shelter's relations manager, told USA Today that the program is ideal because the hotel hosts a lot of long-term military visitors. They have a lot of transient guests who stay for months at a time near our Army and Navy bases. And that's just enough time to fall in love with a dog. Since launching the program in October 2018, the hotel has helped 33 dogs get adopted into forever homes. The hotel now hopes that their program will inspire other businesses to set up similar initiatives. Initiatives such as a man on an internet making a satirical Facebook event for people to storm Area 51 has actually become a lot more. The OKC Animal Welfare Center in Oklahoma City published a series of photos depicting several of their resident pups dressed up in their best alien costumes. "We have great animals ready to protect you from the Area 51 aliens," wrote the shelter. "And adoption is far out of this world." Within days, the post was shared thousands of times with the hashtag #StormOurShelter. Dozens of the shelter pups have been adopted in the week following the post. Not only that, the internet users have donated over $2,500 to the shelter. Animal Welfare has not detailed exactly how many of their dogs and cats have been adopted since they started the hashtag, but their Facebook page says on their social media campaign has had a resounding success. The response to Storm the Shelter was out of this world. "Thank you for all who have supported, shared, donated, and adopted," wrote the shelter. "Let's continue to show everyone that adoption isn't far out of this world. Support your local shelters." You should really look up this hashtag. These pups look so sweet. So if you're looking to adopt a dog, or if you can't commit to that, if you're looking to support, look into it. Be a good use of your time, effort, and funds. When we return, we're going to head, in the air actually, in California to Colorado, or Colorado to California rather, where there was a beautiful, heartwarming story on an airplane, which is hardly something that I ever say, as airplanes seem to be a source of more weird news than positive news. Usually more weirder things happen in confined spaces. But here we go. There is some positive news coming out of the sky this week. So don't leave. Stay tuned for that. It's a very lovely story.
This is your ultimate stop for everything sports. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Should I say more? From the NFL, MLB, the NBA to MMA, it's all in here. The Golden State Media Concepts Sports Podcast. Listen now.
Welcome back. When we left off, we were talking about dogs and efforts to shelter abandoned dogs or dogs without homes. And now, when these anxious parents flying home with their newly adopted daughter, they received a flood of encouragement and support from dozens of their fellow passengers. Back in November, Karen and Dustin Moore had been on their way home to California after becoming proud parents to an 8-day-old baby girl that they'd adopted through an agency in Colorado. With clearance to return home in California, my wife carried our precious bundle while I offered numerous apologies to passengers while maneuvering the aisle with 4 bags, Dustin recalled in a recent Twitter thread. About mid-flight, our daughter awoke and politely informed us that she wanted a new diaper. After inquiring about space for a table change, the thoughtful flight attendant named Jenny cleared a space on the back of the plane and gave us privacy. As the doting dad changed his daughter's diaper, the flight attendant, along with a fellow passenger, politely asked why he was flying with such a young child. I gave them a shortened adoption story, which they hastily offered congratulations and shared a few more kind remarks. About 10 minutes later, another attendant, named Bobby, greeted us with a warm smile and inquired about our daughter. We repeated the story with a few details, and he congratulated us before walking away. My wife and I exchanged curious looks, but thought nothing more about it. To their shock, Bobby's voice came over the intercom, and a few minutes later, he announced the Moores' adoption. The plane erupted in a rousing wave of cheers and applause. Bobby then told the passengers that he would be passing out pens and napkins so everyone could write notes of encouragement for the new parents. Bobby and Jenny ended up collecting more than 60 napkin messages for the Moores. When asked what prompted them to announce the spontaneous baby shower, they told Dustin and Karen that when they themselves have gotten married, another crew of flight attendants had done the same thing on their honeymoon flight. They were now paying the good deed forward to the Moores. Dustin only ended up sharing the sweet story on Twitter earlier this month because he'd become sick and tired of seeing so much negativity on social media, much like why we have this podcast that you're listening to right now. The impromptu baby shower had been particularly moving for him and his wife because they'd been feeling very vulnerable and nervous following their daughter's adoption. What all of those perfect strangers and attendants did not know was the emotionally tender state of 2 brand new parents, wrote Dustin. Parents who, after 9 years of trying, had finally been blessed with their first child. Parents who felt scared, but determined for their new role. The outpouring of love from that flight, brought on by the actions of 2 thoughtfully observant flight attendants, it exceeds my ability to describe what it meant to us. How much those wings and written notes uplifted 2 new parents, determined to love their new daughter. Karen and Dustin have since arranged the napkin notes in a scrapbook, where they hope to one day pass on to their new daughter. One man's act of kindness towards the exuberant 88-year-old woman is touching hearts across social media. Much like the story previously, this story happens on an airplane. Virgin Atlantic airline flight attendant Leah Amy had been working on a flight from New York City to Manchester, England, last week, when the heartwarming exchange took place. Of the hundreds of flights that I've operated, I've had the pleasure of looking after footballers, supermodels, and some Hollywood movie stars. But let me tell you about my two favorite passengers ever, Amy shared on Facebook. One of the passengers, a man named Jack, had been preparing for a first-class flight back home to the UK when he befriended a woman named Violet in the airport. Violet, who used to work as a nurse in the UK and the US, had been visiting her daughter in the Big Apple. The elderly woman used to frequently travel between the two countries so she could visit her family. But since she recently underwent a knee replacement surgery, her flight to New York this month was long overdue. After Violet and Jack finished their conversation in the airport, they both boarded the airplane. But before Jack could take his seat, he found Violet in economy class and offered to fulfill her dream of sitting in first class. Jack and his family purchased seats in our upper-class cabin for a flight home from New York. But when he got on board, Jack went and found Violet in economy and swapped seats with her, Amy wrote on Facebook. He then sat in a row of seats directly next to the economy toilets and never made a peep or asked for anything the rest of the flight. No fusses, no attention. Literally did this out of the kindness of his own heart. Her dream had always been to sit in the front, and Jack made that come true. You should have seen her face when I tucked her in bed after supper. Violet then insisted on taking a picture with the flight crew and her new friend so that she could share the story with her daughter. She said her daughter wouldn't believe her. She wanted a selfie, she said selfie, to prove it, but she didn't have a phone or an email address, said Amy. The flight attendant was happy to take the photos, but only after sharing the sweet story to her own Facebook page. Since publishing the photos last week, hundreds of people have praised Jack for his compassion. I think that's really a really lovely story coming out of, the US and the UK a little bit, because so many people can't afford these incredible experiences. And for someone that's been flying back and forth that often for that long, it's quite an incredible thing for them to be able to experience flying first class. I can't imagine, what that would be like. This is a really, really lovely thing for him to do, and so selflessly, just sitting there and not taking praise, not taking anything for it, just genuinely just doing it because he just wanted her to experience that. I just think that that's, the loveliest way to, to help his new friend out. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit about the generosity of a taxi driver who also was helping out a member of the elderly community who was subject to a scam. So we're going to be talking about that when we come back from the break.
Want to find out what movies to go see? Then check out the GSMC Movie Podcast. It's your ticket to the latest movies, whether it's a new blockbuster event, romantic, comedy, or action flick. This show has got it all covered. They talk some what to go see now. Don't bother. What's hot on Netflix and everything in between. That's gsmcpodcast.com/movie-podcast. When it's all about the movies, it has to be this new show. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit gsmcpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back. So before the break, we were talking about the generosity of a stranger to an elderly woman that he met in an airport. And now, a compassionate cab driver is being hailed for saving an elderly woman from getting scammed out of $25,000. Raj Singh, who's the owner of Rosevale Cabs in California, was called to pick up a 92-year-old woman from her home in Sun City and take her to a nearby bank. As they were driving to the bank, the woman revealed some alarming details about her trip. The woman told Singh that she'd received a call from an IRS employee telling her that she owed the government $25,000. She was on her way to the bank so that she could withdraw the funds and settle her debt as quickly as possible. Singh knew that the phone sounded fishy. He then asked the woman if he could call the IRS employee to ask him some questions. Upon calling his number, the man posing as a government agent claimed he didn't know the woman. When Singh pressured him for more details, the man blocked Singh's number. The woman was still hesitant about the scam, so Singh took her on a detail to the Rosevale Police Department and asked for an officer to sit down with her. Sure enough, an officer sat down with the woman and confirmed that it was a scam. After Singh took the woman home, the officers posted about his good deed on Facebook. As a thank you for Singh's gesture, the officers also invited him back to the station, where they gave him a $50 gift card. We love this story because several times throughout, Raj could have just taken his customer to her stop and not worried about her well-being. He took time from his day, and he had great forethought that brought the almost victim to the police station for an official response. His quick thinking saved the senior citizen $25,000, and for that, we greatly appreciate his efforts, added the department. This is quite a lovely man to take the time to realize that this is something that these are fairly new scams, these IRS calls. So people that aren't on the internet as frequently as younger generations might not know about it being a scam. So it's very incredible of him to take the time to realize that that's what was going on. And to intervene and step in and help this woman out. I really thought that was quite lovely of him. More good news with people helping out senior citizens. When a 96-year-old veteran was too weak to walk to his wife's grave, he was resigned to paying his respect from the car until two onlookers insisted on going the distance for him instead. George Boone had been a pilot who was a prisoner of war to the Nazis during World War II. As a means of paying tribute to his services, Boone was flown from North Carolina to Washington, D.C. by the Honor Flight Network, an organization that pays for veterans to visit their respective memorials at the nation's capital. While they were in the city, Boone asked if they could visit the grave of his wife, Alma, who was laid to rest in 2008. Though it was technically not a stop on the honor tour, they were more than happy to oblige. Unfortunately, they arrived at the cemetery on Saturday, only for Boone's son John to realize that they'd forgotten his father's wheelchair. When asked if his father had the strength to walk, the veteran said no. The two honor flight volunteers who had escorted the father and their son then offered to carry George to the grave. And though he was initially reluctant, as most people would be by a stranger carrying them towards a grave, the idea is a little bit, well, I don't think I would want somebody carrying me to anywhere, really. He was initially reluctant, as you can imagine. He eventually accepted. And as if high school cheerleaders, the men made a chair with their arms. Remember, like you used to do in elementary school when you'd make a chair by holding each other's, wrists and such to create like a stable platform that you would carry people on. We used to do those in like relay races, or not relay races, obstacle races. So they created the chair with their arms, and they carried the veteran all the way to the resting site. For 10 minutes, they held George so that he could pay his respects. 10 minutes. That is a long time to be holding up a fully grown adult, by the way. In case you have never done that before, it is quite a lot. One of the men was so touched by the exchange that he offered to carry George back to the car on his back. He said, "This is my honor and privilege. I'm going to carry you. Wrap your arms around my neck. I've got you." And off they went. "Without a doubt, it gives you so much pride to be an American," John Boone said. "It's not all what we see on the news. There are incredible people out there waiting to do good things and to show acts of kindness." This story really encapsulates everything that this podcast is about. Just Americans helping out other Americans for nothing else than to help. These men got nothing from that other than knowing that they helped this man pay his respects to his late wife. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing to do. When we come back from the break, we're going to talk about some incredible advancements being made for the hearing impaired. A couple different things on that when we return from our break. So stay tuned.
Pets bring such joy to our lives, and the GSMC Pets podcast is here to share in that joy. We'll tell stories of pets finding their forever homes, acting in unexpected ways, being helpful, or just being silly. Whether you love dogs, cats, llamas, reptiles, fish, or you've never met an animal you didn't like, the GSMC Pets podcast is for you.
Welcome back. When we left off, we were talking about the generosity of some American citizens to help out our elderly citizens. And now, Susanna Foldy was declared deaf at 8 months old due to a meningitis infection. And now at 67, with her hands placed gently on a musician's double bass while sitting among the performers of the symphony orchestra in Budapest, she's been able to enjoy Beethoven's famous Fifth Symphony in a way quite similar to the very man who composed it. When I sat next to the musician who played the bass today, I started crying, she told Reuters. My father also had a double bass. I did not have a hearing aid. I put my ear to the bass, and he played to me. This was the first in a series of spring performances being planned by the orchestra's conductor for people with hearing impairments, bringing music to people who would not otherwise have access to it. The performers are positioned in a way that allows audience members with the most severe hearing impairments to sit amongst them, either by placing their hands on the instruments to feel the vibrations, or by holding a red balloon, which gathers vibrations from multiple instruments, conveying them through fingertips. Conductor Matti Hermoni said the idea was to connect the maestro's music with those who were most capable of sympathizing with Beethoven, who famously composed his iconic Ninth Symphony when he was totally deaf in later years. Beethoven's hearing became gradually more and more impaired over his life, and from 1804 to 1808, when he wrote the Fifth Symphony, he was already very difficult for him to hear, and just became worse and worse. He started composing music on his piano so that he could feel the vibrations through the keys. One of the audience members, with their own hearing problems, remarked about the stringed instruments producing a very tactile vibration. It was not a coincidence that he wrote this kind of music. In other news for the hearing impaired, deaf people can now enjoy live theatrical performances more than ever before, thanks to new smart caption glasses. The Royal National Theatre in London has been piloting these glasses with their audience members who may be deaf or hard of hearing. While sign language interpreters are often made available for certain performances, they're not always present for some of these shows. The glasses, on the other hand, use lighting, timing, and stage cues to display scripted dialogue on the inside of the lenses. Even if an actor skips a few lines of dialogue, the glasses will be able to detect the change and display the correct scripting. This way, spectators can watch the actors while reading the dialogue. After several months of testing the glasses, the National Theatre will be making the glasses available for all of their performances free of charge. Additionally, the manufacturer of the glasses hopes that the technology will soon be available in theaters around the world. This is a new technology. It allows the deaf and hard of hearing to have complete access. Sarnia Rafe, the former president of the National Cued Speech Association, told CNN. It's really amazing how far advanced and how positively affected in quality of life for people who are deaf of hard of hearing. This is so important to be able to make these things accessible to people who would otherwise have trouble viewing it in the ways that it's presented. The arts should be accessible to everybody, and it's incredible that they're making ways to make that happen. In a related story, an airline passenger's Facebook post went viral after Lynette Scribner published a moving photo and story about the kindness of strangers in her most recent flight. She saw a gentleman named Tim, who appeared both deaf and blind, in Boston Logan's Airport. He was leaving town after visiting his sister when Lynette observed her signing into his hand so that he could feel her words. He'd been assigned the middle seat of Lynette's row on Alaskan Airlines flight. A kind gentleman who had the aisle seat graciously gave it up for him. At this point, Tim was traveling alone. The flight attendants sincerely wanted to assist him, but had no way to communicate. I watched as they didn't flinch when he reached out to touch their faces and arms. They took his hand and tried so hard to communicate with him to no avail. He had some verbal ability, but clearly could not understand them. The man who'd given up his seat did his best to assist Tim with things like opening up coffee creamer and putting it into his coffee. When Tim made the attempt to stand up and feel his way to the restroom, his seatmate immediately was up to help him. The flight attendants were talking amongst themselves, and someone suggested paging to see if anybody on board knew sign language. That's when this lovely young woman came into the picture. 15 years old. She learned ASL because she had dyslexia, and it was the easiest foreign language for her to learn. For the rest of the flight, she attended to Tim and made sure his needs were met. It was fascinating to watch as she signed one letter at a time into his hand. He was able to read her signing, and they carried on with animated conversation. When he asked her if she was pretty, she blushed and laughed. As the seatmate who had learned a few signs communicated an enthusiastic yes to Tim. I don't know whether I've seen so many people rally to take care of another human being. All of us in the immediate rows were laughing and smiling and enjoying the obvious delight with him having someone to talk to. Huge kudos to the flight attendants of Alaskan Airlines who went above and beyond to meet Tim's needs. This is another example of Americans coming together to make a beautiful experience on a flight. When we come back, the good news in history on today's date when we return from our break.
The GSMC Life and Happiness podcast takes you on a journey of exploration. We'll discuss tried and true methods alongside the latest trends of how to best live your life to its fullest and happiest. From psychology to meditation, science to self-help books, the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast will help you to discover what makes you happy and how you can live life being the best you possible. Download the GSMC Life and Happiness podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type GSMC in the search bar.
Welcome back. When we left off, we were talking about a lot of generosity in the sky. There were quite a few of those stories this time. And now, good news in history on today's date. I'm recording this on the 18th of February, so we're going to be talking about the good news in history for the 18th of February. A very happy birthday to actress Sybil Shepherd, who turns 70 today. Born in Memphis, Tennessee, and named after her grandfather Cy and father Bill, the Blonde won a beauty pageant and became a model. A Glamour magazine cover of the 20-year-old caught an eye of film director Peter Bogdanovich, who cast her in The Last Picture Show, co-starring Jeff Bridges, a box office hit that earned several Oscars, with Shepard nominated for a Golden Globe. She was then cast in The Heartbreak Kid and earned good reviews for her work in the film Taxi Driver. But it was her role as charismatic Maddie Hayes in the TV hit series Moonlighting that defined her career. The brilliant chemistry and repartee with her co-star Bruce Willis on the comedy detective show earned Shepard 2 Golden Globes and 40 Emmy nods for the show, with 7 wins. In 2000, Shepard's best-selling autobiography was published entitled Civil Disobedience. Hilarious. Very funny title. In 1997, she won her 3rd Golden Globe for her sitcom Sybil, in which she played an aging actress struggling to get roles, loosely modeled on herself, with Christine Baranski playing Sybil's hard-drinking gal pal. After many TV films, screen roles, and a Broadway debut, she starred last year in Being Rose, a drama about a dying ex-sheriff who finds love, with James Brolin nonetheless, while soul-searching a motorized wheelchair on a road trip to the Southwest during her final days. So happy birthday, Sybil Shepard. Hindus and Hare Krishnas commemorate the day that Lord Krishna left his body. That is 3102 BC on today's date. Amazing that they knew what date that was then. The first Academy Award winners were announced on today's date in 1929. Wow. It's nearly 100 years old. We're so close. Happy 66th birthday to John Travolta, the Saturday Night Fever, Grease, Pulp Fiction, Get Shorty, Hairspray, Swordfish, and Idina Menzel mispronouncer. His birthday is 1954 on today's date. Gambia became the 37th sovereign state in Africa and the last of Britain's West African colonies to gain independence in 1965. California's Supreme Court struck down the state's death penalty on today's date in 1972. The Space Shuttle Enterprise vehicle went on its maiden flight, perched atop Boeing 747. Snow fell in the Sahara Desert for the only time in recorded history, with a snowstorm that lasted 30 minutes. American speed skater Shani Davis became the first black athlete to win a gold medal in Olympic history for an individual event, winning the men's 1,000-meter Turin. Also, on this day in 1885, Mark Twain's Adventures of Huckleberry Finn was first published in the U.S. The sequel to The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, a scathing satire on enriched attitudes, particularly racism, was amongst the first novels in major American literature to be written fully in regional vernacular English, which made it controversial, especially in the 20th century because of its coarse language and use of racial slurs. And on this day, in 1931, Toni Morrison, the first African-American woman to win the Nobel Prize for Literature, was born. Born Chloe Wofford in Lorain, Ohio, the author is known for her lyrically narrated novels of Black American life, including The Bluest Eye, Song of Solomon, and Beloved, which became a film and also earned her a Pulitzer Prize for fiction in 1988. Her recent book, God Help the Child, was also recorded as an audiobook, with Morrison reading it herself. So if you want to check that out, definitely do. If you want to read the way it's written in her own voice. She worked for years as a book editor for Random House and as a professor at Princeton University. She died last year in 2019. On this day in 1968, David Glimmer joined Pink Floyd, replacing a classmate who checked himself into a psychiatric ward. With the addition of the innovative singer, songwriter, vocalist, guitarist, whose sound is instantly recognizable, Pink Floyd achieved international success with the concept albums Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, and The Wall. One of the most critically acclaimed acts in the history of popular music, the band by 2012 had sold over 25 million records worldwide. Now 72, he's ranked number 14 on Rolling Stone magazine and the greatest guitarist of all time. In 2003, the multi-instrumentalist sold one of his houses, donated the proceeds, £3.6 million, to help fund a housing project for the homeless. He's also contributed to animal rights, poverty, environmental, wildlife, human rights, and music therapy charities. Gilmore discovered and nurtured recording contractor, singer-songwriter Kate Bush. He's also an aviator pilot whose hobby was flying, buying, and selling vintage biplanes. The band broke up in 1995. So that is it for our stories today. I hope you've enjoyed them. Lots of stuff in the air, lots of stuff on the ground as well, obviously, and some really beautiful stories. So there is beauty in America, guys. Let's remember to try and see it. So thank you for listening to the GSMC America Still Beautiful podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Podcast Network. I'd like to ask that please remember to subscribe to the show and write us a nice review. It really helps us. And rate the episode. That also helps quite a bit. Giving us those nice upvotes. And please follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and, of course, on Instagram. All of the social medias. Please give us a follow, give us a like. Thank you very much for listening again. And have yourselves an amazing night. And I will talk to you soon. Thank you.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast, part of the GSMC Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcasts on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, or anywhere you find podcasts. Just type in GSMC to find all of our shows. From the GSMC Podcast Network, from social media news to marketing news, and even weird news, the GSMC Podcast Network has you covered. You can also follow us on Twitter and Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's episode of the Golden State Media Concepts, America's Still Beautiful podcast.